Hello and welcome to today's session of ARR Lockdown with Samantha Marshall. My name is Laura Boone and welcome Samantha. We're delighted you're here to read to us from your new book, Sorcery and Sandstorms.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Samantha has been writing her whole life, scribbling notes on anything close to hand, from the shopping list to napkins to post-it notes. Whatever you do, don't mention post-it notes to her hubby. She grew up reading fantasy and has been a lifelong vampire fan, but wasn't introduced to paranormal romance until her late teens. She knew immediately that romance was what she had been missing from her other reading. She came close to debuting her novel career 11 years ago, then fell pregnant and took some time off to have kids. She debuted for real last year and won ARRA's favorite debut romance author for 2019. She writes speculative fiction and is the author of 2 series. The Weaver's War is a space opera series, and The Kin Chronicles is a paranormal shifter series. She loves both worlds for different reasons. Samantha lives in Melbourne, Victoria, with her husband, 2 kids, a golden retriever and a turtle, and is passionate about crafting, creating journals, good writing, interesting characters, and happily ever afters. You can find out more about her and her projects at https://slicesofsammy.com. Samantha is part of our treasure hunt, so remember to keep watching at the end and take down her author code. Today she is going to read to us, as I said, from Sorcery and Sandstorms, the 2nd book in her space opera series, The Weaver's War. Samantha, over to you.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, so as I said today, I'm going to read to you a little bit from Sorcery and Sandstorms, which is here. And it is book number 2 in the Weaver's War series, following on from this one, which is Sorcery and Stardust, which was book 1. And I'm going to read to you chapter 1 today of this book, which follows on from the previous events, but is also the introduction of a new character. So don't worry if you don't know what's going on, neither does he. So, Sorcery and Sandstorms, chapter 1. Flare. Flare stared at the kaleidoscope of colours swirling in the bottom of his glass. Red, gold, amber, all flickering with hidden rainbows as the fire sputtered in the hearth. Beautiful and empty. Already? He tipped the glass upside down to make sure, and it slipped through nerveless fingers, bounced off the arm of his favourite chair, and smashed on the floor at his feet. Shit. Flare rubbed his face and blinked bleary eyes at the dimly lit room. There were other glasses somewhere. Or maybe it was time to stop pretending to be civilized and just swig straight from the bottle. He tilted his head and stared into the fireplace, contemplating the idea. Yeah, straight from the bottle would do just fine, as long as he could get to it. Flare rolled to his feet, maintaining an upright position with willpower alone. His latest batch of fire whiskey, no more than a day old, stood in neat glass bottles along the liquor cabinet. Measuring the distance, he took a cautious step. 2, now 3. Oh, why was the room tilting like that? Flare threw out a hand and managed to catch hold of the back of a stool, gripping with white-knuckled fingers. Maybe some breathing exercises would help. He just had to stand still for a minute, close his eyes, cycle air in through his nose and out through his mouth. Repeat. Feeling hopeful, Flare cracked an eyelid and peered blearily around him. Nope, the wallpaper was still crawling. Damn. Since when was it so bright in his sitting room anyway? Hadn't he turned off all the lights? Flare checked his hands in case he'd accidentally cast another drunken spell, but his fingers swam in and out of focus so quickly, it was impossible to tell what they'd been doing while he was distracted. Still, the light was blue, and his fire magic was orange, which meant it had to be coming from somewhere else. And it was getting brighter. Careful not to disturb his fragile balance, Blair splayed one hand across the back of the stool and turned to look. The room exploded. Fire, blue fire, filled the room, washing over Flair's skin and wrapping him in unnatural warmth. The shockwave picked him up like a rag doll, slamming him against the back wall and pinning his body in place. Flair choked for breath as the intense heat scoured his flesh, boiling the alcohol straight out of his blood. A furnace's roar filled his ears, building ever higher, until it disappeared, leaving him alone in sudden darkness. Flair slid down the wall and puked right there on the singed floor. His heart raced fit to burst, adrenaline and magic flooding his veins so that he trembled like a newborn. He retched again and again and again until his stomach was empty and his throat burned. When at last it was over, he rolled to his back and stared into the inky blackness, gulping great mouthfuls of smoky air into his lungs and trying to make sense of what he'd just experienced. When nobody leapt out to yell, "Surprise!" or to stab him, and a quick pinch of his forearm revealed that this was not, in fact, a dream, Flair dragged himself into a sitting position and set his back against the wall. The nausea had passed, leaving him with an acidic taste in his mouth, a pounding headache, and disturbingly clear thought processes. "That's one hell of a way to sober up," he muttered, rubbing both hands over his face. Stubble tickled his palms and Flair frowned. When had he last shaved? Gods knew. Taking a deep, ash-filled breath, he muttered a spell and a ball of fire flared to life in his palm. The room was totally ruined. Furniture incinerated, and the floor and walls both fractured and scorched. Flair looked down at himself to check for injury and naked. Right. Naked and sober, but otherwise unharmed. He rubbed his face again. Considering the explosion had seen fit to burn his clothes right off his body and cremate his furniture, he could only imagine what would have happened had he not been a Class 1 fire sorcerer of unparalleled strength and skill, and, by grace of that fact, fireproof. But what had happened? His answer lay in the exact center of the room, the origin of that initial blue spark which had so quickly become a blaze. Flair took one look and was instantly on his feet, careening down the stairs to the kitchen counter as fast as his wobbly legs would take him. He snatched up his personal communicator and tapped out a call sequence that, after last week, he'd sworn never to use again. Famous last words, apparently. What? Lesk was pissed as hell, but at least she had answered. This better be good. Get here now. There must have been something in his tone, because for once in her life, his youngest sister didn't argue. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Enough time to grab a robe from the downstairs bedroom, flick on the artificial lights, and rinse his mouth out with water before the inevitable knock on the townhouse's front door. That was 4 minutes, Flair said as he yanked the door open. Lesk swept inside in the same formal robes she'd worn earlier that day, though the tight knot of her plum-coloured hair had lost several pins and now listed sideways. Flair frowned down at his diminutive sister, noting the shadows under her eyes. You look like shit. Lesk raised a brow at that, giving Fleur a pointed once-over. You've seen better days yourself. Sober for one. Biting back his pithy retort, Fleur grabbed her wrist and tugged Lesk up the stairs. I need to show you something. The last thing I need is a tour of your den of debauchery at this time of... Lesk gasped as he dragged her into the scorched, almost empty sitting room. Great gods of Sorkin, is that what I think it is? Yeah. Fleur stared at the star shape permanently burnt into his floorboards, then at the object in the centre. Arcana's leather satchel. Lesk stood in silence for a long minute, then crossed the room to scoop the satchel bag up in both hands. She stroked short, capable fingers over the worn surface and sighed. Is she dead then? Fleur thought back to the last holovid he'd received, the plans Arcana had detailed. He should have shared the hollows. He knew he should, but they were his only moments of escape from the maelstrom of official torture his life had become, and he coveted them like diamonds. The mission was dangerous, but no, she's alive. You seem certain. I am. If Arcana were dead, my oath would have gone dark, and if Fenris were dead, Talon would be parading the victory round for all to see. If he's quiet, they're alive. But I don't think things went to plan. Fleur chewed on the inside of his cheek, eyes on the leather satchel. In fact, I think they need our help. And you deduced that from the arrival of a bag. The arrival of that bag blew up my sitting room, he pointed out, ignoring her increasing temper. And why else send it if not as a message? Arcana needs us. I know it. And despite that permanent frown, you know it too. Suppose for a moment I'm inclined to agree. What can we do? Lesk whirled on Fleur with eyes like gimlets. We don't even know where they are. Then we look. We turn every stone in the God's damned universe until we find them. Fleur took a deep, shuddering breath and grabbed at the sudden ache in his chest. Please, Lesk. I can't do this alone. His sister's eyes unfocused, and Fleur knew she was peering inside him with that invisible, unfathomable healing power. Brioff above, what have you been doing to yourself? When did you last eat a proper meal? I don't remember. Fire whiskey? Too much. Fighting, sparring, Lesk corrected, waving a hand that showed an innate contempt for the military which Fleur had once been solely responsible for. And using your magic to avoid overload? Not enough. Not nearly enough. Maybe some time in the ring with a few of his generals would have helped, but that privilege had been given to another, along with his old title, when Fleur had been shoved permanently into the Fire Elder position. Lesk hesitated. What of your other pastime? Fleur wasn't so far gone that he'd let her escape easily. He raised an eyebrow. Wood whittling? Mature, as always. Lesk rolled her eyes. When was the last time you achieved physical completion with a sexual partner? Before Gravella died, he growled. That was the defining line. Before and after the betrayal which had shredded what remained of his lonely soul. And before you ask, no, I haven't been taking care of things myself. I've had no interest. I see. Lesk's eyes narrowed as they travelled the length of his body and back again. All right, Fleur, but this is for Arcana. Your sisterly affection is scintillating. He allowed Lesk to usher him back down the stairs to the spare bedroom he kept for his visitors. Rule 1. Never let anyone into your actual bedroom. Too intimate, too binding. There will be conditions, Lesk announced, waving him onto the bed. I'm listening. Fleur shucked his robe and tried not to notice the sharp intake of breath as she appraised him with her external eyes as well as her internal ones. Maybe he should have showered and made an attempt to eat before she'd arrived, but then it would have done little to hide the wastage of more than a month's worth of poor self-care. Lesk shoved him onto the mattress and splayed one hand over his heart and the other over his navel. The only way to find Akana will be to get you off planet. But there's no use sending a starved, depressed alcoholic off in a spaceship and hoping for the best. We need a plan. Fleur clenched his teeth as healing magic poured through his body like molten honey. I'm not an alcoholic. The way I see it, Les continued as though he'd never spoken, our best chance will be to get you onto Galactic Alliance Station as Sorkin's official ambassador. That way, you'll have access to the entire Alliance's network of information, provided you're stealthy enough to utilize it without getting caught. Sorkin's already assigned an ambassador to the Alliance. He should know. He'd spent the last week listening to his fellow elders bluster endlessly about it. Lesk clicked her tongue at him. I was there, remember? However, considering we've only just signed the paperwork and are yet to present our ambassador, it seems an opportune time to get you aboard without raising suspicion. Oh, because I'm sure Leatrice will love having her position swapped out for quiet. Lesk's healing power rushed even faster through his veins, negating the ability to speak. I seem to have a sudden recollection that Leatrice's intergalactic vaccinations may not be up to date. If that's the case, she'll be detained for several weeks in order to have them updated and the new paperwork officiated, making her application obsolete. A different ambassador will need to go in her stead. Fleur fought the magic's cloying sweetness and glared up at her. And in return for getting your worthless backside off planet and dealing with the council fallout, I want weekly updates and your promise to consider any suggestions I might have. This is Akana's life, not a game. Lesk paused for effect, her stare drilling into him even harder than her magic. When you find her, I want to be the first to know. Done, Fleur croaked. The flow of healing magic cut off, and he gasped, his body arching off the bed. Energy flooded his cells as he settled, and he knew without looking that Lesk had erased all physical evidence of his self-neglect. Thank you. I already told you, I'm not doing this for you, she snapped. I don't want your thanks, Fleur. I want results. You're a weapon, and I expect you to use any and every tool in your considerable arsenal to complete this mission. Fleur flinched, not from the intensity in Lesk's expression, but from watching what she was asking him to do, to become. His eyes skittered away down the length of his healthy, tanned body to his left hand. Energized by the healing magic, the bright orange runes of his oath of allegiance burned with accusing brilliance. The oath of allegiance he had made not to Sorkin, but to Akana, to the one and only being he knew without doubt he loved more than his own life. His hand curled into a fist, and Fleur felt his resolve harden along with it. He looked up to meet Lesk's steely gaze, managed to do so without flinching. They didn't agree on much, but in this, yes, in this he would yield. On my honour, I swear I'll do whatever it takes. It might have been his imagination, but he swore he saw Lesk's face soften for a fraction of a second. Find our sister, Fleur. You're the only one who can. Fleur curled his hand around her wrist and squeezed. I will. And that, boys and girls, is the end of chapter 1. So I hope you enjoyed it.
I loved it. Thank you, Samantha.
That's all right.
Really wonderful, and I can't wait to read the rest. Can I ask you to hold up your treasure hunt code, please?
Most certainly. I have got it here. Oh, let me turn so that it's not like glared out by the light.
That's perfect. We can see it there.
Right alongside my COVID manicure.
Yes, well, it's lockdown times, you know. Manicures and haircuts and various other things have all gone by the wayside.
That's exactly right.
Thanks again, and it was lovely hearing your story.
Thank you.
Look forward to the ongoing series. How many more books do you think you'll have?
That's really hard to answer. At the moment, I think there's probably, I can say there'll be at least 6. The problem that I have is keeping things short. So the notes that I've got down that I thought would be 1 book, for example, I think are going to end up being 2. So to put that into perspective, Sorcery and Stardust, which is a little on the hefty side, this book here was also supposed to be part of this in my original notes, and the book that will become book 3 was also supposed to be part of this.
Okay.
So I'm going to say there'll be 6, maybe 8 by the time we get where we need to go. But at the moment, I'm still working through what that's going to entail.
Fabulous. Well, there's a whole wonderful world for us all to meet there. Thanks again.